All right, good evening. This is Chair Justin Cooley, and I would like to call this regular meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would Deputy City Clerk Megan Wilbanks please call roll?
Commissioner Flores,
Present.
Commissioner Jorgensen,
Here.
Commissioner Khan,
Here.
Commissioner Munoz Morris is absent at this time. Commissioner Tully will also be absent tonight. Vice Chair Houghton,
I'm here.
Chair Cooley.
Here. At this time, we will hear any public comment for items not on tonight's agenda. Items raised are generally referred to staff, and if action by the commission is necessary, may be scheduled for a future meeting. Deputy Clerk, do we have any public comment for items not on the agenda?
No, Chair, we do not.
Anyone in the audience here to comment on something not on the agenda tonight? Okay. That takes us to consent. Consideration of our minutes from the December 11th, 2024 Planning Commission minutes. Before we vote, do any commissioners have any comments on consent? Before we vote, I should note that Commissioner Munoz Morris is now here.
I wanted to make a comment if I could.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is not on the agenda, but I just wanted to mention a couple of things. I want to congratulate Haslow on the reopening of the Anderson Hotel, which I think is it fully open yet, or is it still in progress? Yeah, so that addresses part of the housing situation that we're all concerned about, and that is partly the topic of tonight's agenda. And then also wanted to point out that tomorrow night is the community forum at Ledwick Center, is that right? From 6 to 9. And there's going to be reception starting at 5:30. So anybody's interested in what this town's going to look like, come on by for that. And I'm going to try and make it to that as well.
All right, thank you for that. For those reminders, back to the consent agenda. Anyone have any comments on the minutes? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the minutes as drafted.
All right.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say no. Now we'll move to item 4, our public hearing. Any court challenge to the action taken on public hearing items on the agenda may be limited to considering only those issues raised at the public hearing or in written correspondence delivered to the City of San Luis Obispo at or prior to the public hearing. If you wish to speak, please give your name and address for the record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. The public hearing item before us is to consider 5 sites for the rotating overnight safe parking pilot program. At this time, I'd like to ask commissioners for their ex parte disclosures of contact with anyone who has provided information to commissioners not on the record, so that information may be used as part of the decision-making process. Anyone have any disclosures?
No, sir.
All right, no disclosures. Great, we're ready to proceed. Would Homelessness Response Manager Daisy Weiberg and Housing Coordinator David Amini please present the report?
Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. As Chair Cooley mentioned, my name is Daisy Weiberg, and I serve as the Homelessness Response Manager for the City of San Luis Obispo. I'm joined tonight by our Housing Coordinator, David Amini. We are presenting 5 Director's Action Permits for your review in consideration for CapSlow's rotating overnight safe parking pilot program. Staff's recommendation this evening is to adopt the draft resolution approving the 5 sites for the rotating overnight safe parking pilot program based on findings and subject to conditions of approval. Before we review the proposed sites, I'd like to provide background information on CapSlow's safe parking programming in our community, as well as previous actions by the Planning Commission. Since 2016, CapSlow has operated a safe parking program that provides overnight parking for individuals experiencing vehicular homelessness. CapSlow's 40 Prado safe parking program currently provides overnight safe parking for up to 12 vehicles and RVs on site at 40 Prado Homeless Services Center. In addition to the 40 Prado Safe Parking Program, Capslo also operated the Railroad Safe Parking Program under the city's emergency proclamation from March 2021 to August 2023 to provide safe shelter options for individuals experiencing homelessness during the COVID-19 pandemic. In advance of the Railroad Safe Parking Program concluding in August 2023, Capslo and the city began collaborating with local faith community partners to develop a rotating overnight safe parking pilot program to provide expanded safe parking opportunities at various sites throughout the community. Overnight safe parking is a best practice used throughout the state, and several cities, including the city of Fremont in the Bay Area, operate rotating models. Rotating programs utilize multiple locations to provide overnight safe parking on a temporary basis to minimize disruptions of operations at any one particular site. On July 12, 2023, the Planning Commission unanimously approved a conditional use permit establishing Capslo as a safe parking program administrator to operate a rotating overnight safe parking program. The CUP was approved in accordance with Municipal Code Section 17.86.230 and consistent with the General Plan and Homelessness Response Strategic Plan. Individual safe parking site approvals that will operate under the program CUP are to be considered through an administrative process for a director's action permit. However, when the Planning Commission approved the program CUP, the Commission requested that the first director's action permits being proposed for the program be referred to the Planning Commission by the Community Development Director. Therefore, the Director has referred the request from Capslo to operate 5 rotating safe parking sites to the Planning Commission for review in accordance with the Safe Parking Ordinance and the zoning regulations. I would also like to note that the program CUP may be subsequently reviewed at an administrative hearing if written complaints are received and substantiated by information and evidence that a violation of the program CUP or municipal code has occurred. Capslo is intending to operate the rotating overnight safe parking pilot program in coordination with the existing 12-space 40 Prado overnight safe parking program. The program will expand overnight parking locations for households living in their vehicles by providing 12 additional parking spaces at rotating host sites. Participant intake will take place on site at 40 Prado Homeless Services Center, and drop-in enrollments will not be allowed at the rotating host sites. Participants will initially be enrolled in the 40 Prado Safe Parking Program, and after utilizing that site for 30 days, they will be considered for referral to the rotating program on a case-by-case basis. The proposed rotating model will operate within the hours of 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. for site check-in and within the hours of 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. for vehicle parking. All participants will be required to check out and vacate the safe parking site by 7 a.m. each morning. Capslo staff will oversee the participant referral and intake process, including on-site check-in and check-out at host site locations, site monitoring, program operations, and case management to assist in facilitating participants' transition to permanent housing. The program will rotate monthly between sites hosted by faith-based organizations and city-owned properties. Faith-based sites will host the program for a maximum of 2 times in a 12-month period with host site approval. However, the initial commitment from each faith community partner is for 1 month. When the program is ready for implementation, city-owned sites will be assigned the initial 2 to 3 rotations and may be used 2 to 4 times in a 12-month period. The city's safe parking regulations establish performance standards that are required for any safe parking facility within the city. Capslo has agreed to uphold and implement all relevant performance standards for each host site location included in the program. Requirements for the rotating overnight safe parking pilot program include participants must be 18 years of age, their vehicle must be operable, and they must have an active driver's license, vehicle registration, and auto insurance. Case management will be required for program participation, and a Megan's Law check, which is the Registered Sex Offender Registry, will be completed for all participants. Any individuals with this criminal background status will not be eligible for participation. Program participants will also be required to enter a behavior contract with Capslo, agreeing to adhere to all program rules and policies. This is not a comprehensive list, but the highlighted rules are questions that staff have received from community members. Only one vehicle will be allowed per participant and no guests will be allowed. No alcohol, drugs, weapons, fires, or cooking or food preparation will be allowed on premises. No music that is audible outside of a personal vehicle. No dumping of waste outside of vehicles. Pets must be kept on a leash and waste properly disposed of, and participants may not be within a half-mile radius of the site outside of program hours. Violations of the program rules will result in removal from the program. In addition to the participant agreement, CAPSLO will be responsible for upholding a neighborhood relations plan for each safe parking site. The plan includes providing neighbors with relevant contact information should any concerns or issues arise, providing training for employees on procedures for emergency situations, hosting regular inspections of the site to identify any issues or needs, and hosting neighborhood meetings as needed to share information or address concerns. CAPSLO will also be responsible for implementing a monitoring and oversight plan for each rotating host site to mitigate any potential impacts of the program. Security measures outlined in that plan include a dedicated CAPSLO staff member will conduct site visits approximately every 2 hours during program hours to ensure that all vehicles on site are registered participants and to address any safety concerns. The dedicated staff member will be located at 40 Prado outside of the periodic site visits, but they will be on call and available to address any on-site issues that arise. A participant list, including vehicle make, model, and license plate number, will be provided to SLO PD and the host site to allow for the police department to address any unregistered parkers accessing the safe parking sites. Each participant will receive a safe parking permit and assigned parking space, and participants must enroll in the program at 40 Prado Homeless Services Center. As I mentioned earlier, no drop-in enrollments will be allowed at the rotating sites. A portable restroom, hand washing station, and trash dumpster will be provided at each site, but those will be locked outside of program hours. And CAPSLO will assign a participant site captain to monitor the site and contact the dedicated CAPSLO staff member and/or the police department to report any on-site issues. In addition, SLO PD will patrol the sites and areas surrounding each site as resources allow. I would now like to turn it over to my colleague David to provide an overview on the proposed sites.
Thank you, Daisy. City staff have worked closely with CAPSLO and the faith community to identify viable sites for the rotating safe parking program. CAPSLO submitted Director's Action Permit applications for the first 5 sites being proposed for review, which we will walk you through shortly. As you can see, the sites are distributed throughout the city with the intention of lessening any perceived impacts on any one location. In residential zones, safe parking is only allowed as an accessory use to a public assembly or religious facility. There's an additional 6th site located outside of the city limits that is also proposed to be part of the program, but does not require city permit approval. That site, Congregation Beth David, is included on this overview map over on the west side. In total, the proposed program would consist of 3 sites on city-owned property and 3 sites hosted by faith-based organizations. Each site was considered for various factors, including a 50-foot residential buffer, zoning, lighting, and site constraints. If approved by the Planning Commission tonight, the pilot program will start at one of the 3 city-owned sites. CAPSLO will execute a memorandum of understanding for each site, which will address any specific site requirements as well as the standard program rules. I'm going to start off with the city-owned safe parking sites. Here's the Calle Joaquin Park and Ride location, and it's located at 5045 Calle Joaquin. This is a city-owned parking lot, and it's located between the Hampton Inn and Suites and the Rose Garden Inn. The surrounding parcels are zoned tourist commercial and conservation and open space. The 12 parking spots will be located in the green rectangular area on the map closer to Calle Joaquin. On the other side of this lot, there's an EV charging station that's under construction, and this charging station will complete construction before the program starts. The site will be prioritized for use outside of peak tourism months. Our next site is the City Courtyard. This is located at 25 Prado Road. The surrounding parcels are zoned service commercial and office, and the 40 Prado Homeless Services Center is located across the street. These 12 spaces that will be used for the program are located at the front of the City Courtyard facility, and at this location, the program hours have been modified to end at 6 a.m. in order to reduce the impact on city public works staff arriving for work. Staff members park in a separate parking area located closer to the right on the plan, and that's separate from the safe parking spots. This site will be utilized during the months between April and September. The final city-owned site is the Damon Garcia Sports Complex parking lot located off of Broad Street and Industrial Way. The surrounding parcels are zoned business park, service commercial, and community commercial. The site will only be utilized during June and July when the facility is closed for maintenance. And the 12 parking spots that will be utilized for the program will be concentrated on the south portion of the parking lot. Capslo staff will install traffic barriers during program hours to prevent non-participant entry to the site. Now we're going to move on to the church-owned sites. Renovate Church, located at 2075 Johnson Avenue, will host the program in their parking lot. The surrounding parcels are zoned moderate density residential, and the site will be utilized during months that best accommodate the church's programming. The site will be used for 1 to 2 months within a 12-month period. The program parking spots are located close to the church building and away from the residential uses surrounding the site, as well as away from the Johnson Street frontage. The 50-foot buffer requirement from residential uses is met and exceeded by this plan. Next, we have Journey Christian Fellowship located at 317 Foothill Boulevard. The surrounding parcels are zoned low-density residential, and the 12 parking spots in the program are concentrated closest to the church building and away from the street frontage on Foothill. The church owns a house immediately to the east of the church property within the 50-foot residential buffer. This house is not used as a residence and is used for church programming outside of the safe parking program hours. This site will be utilized during months that best accommodate the church's programming, and the site will be used for 1 to 2 months within a 12-month period. If the director's action permits are approved by the Planning Commission this evening, Capslo will move forward with the following next steps: confirming the funding sources to implement the 1 to 2 year pilot program, working with each of the host sites to confirm the monthly rotating schedule and to execute the memorandums of understandings which outline each partner's responsibilities, as well as all the site-specific requirements and conditions as directed by the Planning Commission. Once those steps have been taken, the program will be ready for implementation. And once implemented, Capslo, the city, and participating faith community partners will prioritize ongoing community engagement to ensure that the program is a success for all safe parking participants, community partners, and residents. The city and Capslo will also continue ongoing outreach efforts to other community partners to try to secure additional sites for the rotating model. Ultimately, the goal of the pilot program is to develop a model that can be replicated on a larger scale county-wide to address regional safe parking needs. I'd now like to hand it back to Daisy to provide a few closing remarks.
Thank you, David. And I'd like to zoom out to provide a bigger picture look at why we're here tonight. The city has established preventing and addressing homelessness as a key priority in alignment with its major city goal for housing and homelessness and the SLO countywide plan to address homelessness. According to point-in-time count data, the average number of people experiencing homelessness in the city of San Luis Obispo has fluctuated between 385 and 512 since 2015. Of those experiencing homelessness in the city, an average of 62% have been unsheltered, meaning that they reside in places not meant for human habitation, including public spaces, vehicles, and abandoned buildings. In the 2024 point-in-time count, 140 people reported a vehicle as their sleeping accommodation, making up 27% of the homeless population in the city of SLO. We believe that number underreports the number of households actually experiencing vehicular homelessness in our community, but regardless, the data demonstrates a critical need for safe parking opportunities. Capslo's small but pivotal programs at 40 Prado Homeless Services Center and the former railroad location have historically been the only overnight safe parking programs in the region. And Capslo's referral list for the 40 Prado Safe Parking Program currently includes over 150 households. While the proposed rotating overnight safe parking pilot program is intentionally small by design, it would double Capslo's current safe parking capacity. The city's homelessness response strategic plan, which outlines the city's role in implementing strategies to prevent homelessness and connect individuals experiencing homelessness to services and housing, specifically identifies safe parking as a key task, and staff have received direction from council to proceed with implementing the rotating overnight safe parking pilot program in partnership with Capslo and the faith-based community. This program is not designed to end homelessness, but it is one strategy in a comprehensive set of strategies to help connect community members experiencing homelessness with services and housing. That concludes our presentation, and now I would like to revisit staff's recommendation to adopt the draft resolution approving the 5 sites for the rotating overnight safe parking pilot program based on the findings we have discussed this evening and subject to conditions of approval. Jack Leahy, the Homeless Services Director for CAPSLO, will be providing a brief presentation as the applicant representative, and he and our team are available to answer any questions from the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This time I'd like to know if there are any questions for staff from the commissioners, but I would note that we do have time for a brief presentation from the applicant in a moment, so if you have any questions for the applicant, you may want to hold those. Any questions for staff? Go ahead.
The only thing that I didn't want to wait on was the image of the Renovate Church, and the green square seemed like it was right on top of the building. So could you clarify what's the deal there?
That is just a Google map issue, I think, where we pulled that map from. It was a tent that was temporarily in their parking lot. That was the satellite image, so that is no longer in the parking lot. So thank you for clarifying that, Commissioner Houghton.
Go ahead.
I had a couple questions. CAPSLO's conditional use permit, is that a one-time approval, or is that something that would be looked back at 5, 10, or sometime years in the future?
So the conditional use permit can be pulled for review if there's a substantiated complaint received by a member of the public or city staff. That's the point where basically the permit can be pulled for review at an administrative hearing.
And for future site,
Oh, I just wanted to, I'm Teresa McClish, Principal Planner here at the City of SLO, and this conditional use permit is a land use entitlement that does not have an end date, but as David mentioned, does have provisions in the conditions for a review if needed.
Sorry, quick point of clarity. It does have an end date in the sense that when the approved use stops at the site, the CUP ends, right? The CUP does not remain with the site if the operation moves somewhere else. Is that correct?
The CUP was issued for the Safe Parking Administrator Program. So the CUP is a existing entitlement to operate a program. Each site has to be separately approved with a director's action permit.
So as long as the program is active, the CUP is active, but when the program sunsets or becomes inactive or funding runs out, something like that, would the CUP also then terminate?
The CUP would not terminate unless, it could just not ever be implemented, but it does not end on its own.
So there's no sunset clause for those? It can just kind of like remain in perpetuity?
If I may.
Please.
Director Tway, this is a little bit unusual for a CUP. You are correct in that normally a CUP is assigned to a specific location, and we do have provisions in the code that if you cease to operate that conditionally permitted use, after some time it would lapse and you'd have to come back and get a new one. The way the city's regulations for the safe parking program were created was to use the CUP as a tool to approve an administrator, which again is a little unusual. It's not the specific site. The specific site approvals are now these director actions. So the CUP, as Ms. McClish was explaining, would remain active unless we revoked it for some reason.
Gotcha.
It's the individual site approvals that, would control whether or not a certain site is allowed to be used. But this CUP in particular is a little different than what you are normally seeing as the Planning Commission.
Sorry.
I do have a couple of other questions. One was about future sites. Would the director be able to approve those? I wasn't sure about the wording where it had to go to the Planning Commission this first time. Is that just for the initial, and future sites could be approved by the director?
Correct. Those could be approved by the director unless she chooses to refer them to the Planning Commission for review.
Okay. My last one was the site at Congregation Beth David. Is the county going through a process to approve that site?
The city and CAPSLO have been working with the county to understand the permitting requirements for that site. So they will, yes, the county will be involved with any permitting needs for that site.
Any other questions for staff? Go ahead.
Just, I caught up with what you guys were talking about, just in case anybody was confused. That was just about having Capslo be the administrator of the program, right? Not about any specific sites. Okay, thanks.
Correct.
All right, at this time, the applicant has up to 10 minutes to make a presentation, and then we have time for questions for the applicant after that.
Oops. Good evening. I just first want to thank the commission for taking this item on and having this discussion. And I will be brief because a lot of what I would have said has already been covered by my city colleagues. So if you can go next slide, yep. So starting just at the need and what we see at Prado Safe Parking Program specifically. Since February 2024, we've received 384 requests for safe parking services at our site. So that's through our outreach team and through our online form where we receive, hey, I need XYZ service. That referral list, we've been able to divert 8 households that we can 100% confirm into housing before they even receive services from us. But of those 384 requests, 163 are still currently waiting enrollment in safe parking services. We see this need growing, and we see diversion efforts and housing efforts being really effective with this subpopulation of people experiencing homelessness. But part of what we're seeing is that the expanded capacity really lets us meet the need that has always been there. This need is not new this year. This need did not develop because we were approved to expand from 7 spots to 12 spots at our Prado location. The need remained the same while Railroad was a program where we averaged almost 24 folks a night staying there. So I just wanted to couch that in that we're really responding to what we hear from the community and what we hear from the people we serve as a need that's there. Next slide. People who experience homelessness in their vehicles, just really brief for everybody here. It's different than folks who experience homelessness out on the streets or in a shelter. Nationally, it's about 14% of people who experience homelessness experience it in their vehicles. Most typically, it's an older adult, a white older adult specifically. It's increasingly harder for people who experience homelessness in their vehicles to have a safe place to exist and to be able to park overnight safely without fear of citation or harassment. There's not a lot of programs nationally that address this issue, but there are a good amount in California and in other areas that have larger populations of people experiencing homelessness in their vehicles. These programs, when they're properly designed, as ours at Prado really was highlighted as a national best practice, are really successful to help folks move on quickly and resolve their experience of homelessness. Again, this group of people experiencing homelessness, there are a lot of different faces of homelessness throughout our community. This group more typically has a higher income and is more, we encounter more typically is working. So it's easier for us to come up with solutions with them to get out of their situation and into a housing setting. Next slide. 4D Prado Safe Parking, the program that is currently existing and as Daisy mentioned, has been in operation for a number of years now at 40 Prado Road, and before that at the 40 Prado, or at the Prado Day Center. In 2024, we had 55 total households enrolled in the program, with 47% exiting to housing. The national average for safe parking programs is 34% exiting, not just to housing, just to shelter or housing. If we included shelter, that success rate would be higher. But that success rate is just people exiting to housing. We currently have 12 households in the program, and we have a median duration of stay of 119 days. So in rough numbers, 120 days is our average stay for somebody to get to housing, and approximately half of folks who are enrolled in the program exit to permanent housing. Next slide. Railroad has been mentioned as another program that we had operated. This program was a safe parking program, but it was a little different. So I just wanted to clarify that for this commission, that this was a COVID response program that was launched in 2021. It was a low barrier approach program, so we allowed on-site registration. We really encouraged people. We advertised the location. We made signage that was very visible to attract individuals to come and register on site and safe park there. That is not what we're doing in the rotating model. We don't allow on-site registration in the rotating model. We are not planning on publishing the rotation calendar. And we are requiring an enrollment in a different program before enrollment in this program, the rotating program. We did not require that at Railroad. And we served 258 households in terms of impact, and we're able to house 51 households directly out of this program. And for an outreach, this was more of an outreach-based program that is, again, positive numbers, higher than the national averages that you see in outreach programs in terms of housing placement. Next slide. So that brings us to the rotating safe parking. As you have seen this map, these are the sites that are proposed. We really wanted to integrate a lot of our lessons learned from safe parking programs that we have operated or even proposed, and heard feedback from the community. But I just personally like this visual because you can see the arrows rotating the sites. So I know you know the sites, but I couldn't help myself. So next slide, please. So there has been a lot of feedback and questions, specifically around two items that I wanted to dive into, which is the program overview and the site safety. So for somebody to enroll in this program, like it has been mentioned multiple times, on-site registration is not a part of this program. Somebody would have to already be working with CAPSLO to even be deemed eligible for our 40 Prado program. So if I'm a person experiencing homelessness in SLO, in their vehicle, I need an initial engagement where I either reach out to CAPSLO or CAPSLO reaches out to me through our online forum or through our outreach team. When we do make contact with households, our initial conversation with them is diversion, meaning we work as hard as we can not to enroll them in our services. So we can make sure that there's any family that they can reconnect with, any friends, any stability network that we can connect them with, we will, and we allocate resources for that, for bus tickets, train tickets, gas cards, vehicle repair to get you to there. So we do a lot of work to not have clients. After that point, if somebody still clearly needs the help, we enroll them in our outreach and access center programs. We do a HUD intake. We have them sign a behavior contract and do a criminal background check, as has been mentioned. Once they have passed through that programming, then they would be eligible to be enrolled in our Prado Safe Parking program. Our Prado Safe Parking program, as you all know, has 12 spots. It has a pretty long wait list. And when somebody does enroll in the program, they are required to work one-on-one with a case manager to develop a housing plan and to adhere to an additional set of behavioral contracts that are specific for that program. When somebody's in that program, there are cameras within the parking lot. There's oversight 24/7, and we are able to ensure that this person or this household is adhering to the program rules, engage with the case manager, and only in those cases would we then refer them to a rotating safe parking model. So it is not an automatic referral. It is a referral that is based on the judgment on what we see and the behaviors of the program that we run. So I will quickly, I know I have 30 seconds, so if you can go to the next slide. I just wanted to underline all our site safety precautions that we put in place. I am pretty much repeating things that you have already seen in the reports. Next slide. And just one last note, we have done extensive community feedback on this. We have had community feedback sessions at Road Safe Parking, Palm Street, SLO Nazarene, SLO City Faith Community Meeting, and we actually had a community feedback session last week where we heard from the community on what were their concerns and what were their positive takes on our program. And right here is our feedback that we got from the community last week. Concerns regarding traffic at check-in and checkout, concerns about spillover effect, concerns on vetting our program participants, and concerns on the site impacts. We did get positive feedback overall on the program design from the community. And then we did make some changes in our implementation based on that feedback, that we would be more strict on check-in and checkout time, that people couldn't queue up near the site before enrolling, having intentional routes to make sure that we're enforcing our site rules as best we can. So that is what we did in anticipation of this, to make sure that we were hearing from the community and made some adaptations that we could still keep the program whole with it. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And some of the things I know you rushed through, you may have a chance to cover in response to questions. Commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant? Go ahead.
I have a few. Oh, could I ask you to come back up, please? Yeah. Thank you for your presentation. And
Yes.
First of all, I'll say that I'm really glad that we're here discussing the program again. I think this is the third time since I joined the commission that we've talked about safe parking. So
Third, yeah.
I'm glad to see it move forward. I wanted to get a little bit of information from you. So at the Prado Road facility, where you now have the 12 sites that we expanded from 7, it's been going for a few years. How many incidents have there been there with the participants as far as noise complaints, arguments, violations of the policies in general? It doesn't have to be exact, but like 5, 10, less than 20?
So since in 2024, I believe we had, I think, 5 exits for program rules, but not adhering to program rules. It has been a handful every year. We haven't received any noise complaints. We actually have a neighbor right next to us. The RTA bus facility is right next to us, and actually the safe parking site itself is right next. It's the farthest you can go in the lot next to the RTA site. And we haven't received any complaints or issues from them. I mean, we were at a community meeting last week, and we had an issue where somebody was throwing an apple over the fence. We were able to resolve it within a day, and it wasn't even a safe parker. It was somebody who was not enrolled in our program. The issues that happen between safe parkers and conflicts, those happen in every one of our programs. We have staff trained on de-escalation to be able to make sure that it doesn't reach a point of incident. So it hasn't been something that has been an issue in our safe parking program.
Okay, gotcha. And I wanted to ask that because I think probably a majority of our focus here today is going to be on the site on Foothill, which is what we got a lot of communication for. And I wanted to ask about that one in particular because it seems to be the only one really surrounded by residential neighborhoods. So I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts about the reasoning behind it. Was it just because the church approached you to offer themselves, or could you maybe talk about how that site was selected?
So it was a collaborative process between CAPSLO and the city in that, so I can give my response, but I do want to give space for Daisy to respond as well. We move forward with sites that were appropriate for us to be able to facilitate a quality program. So that the parking lot on Foothill met those thresholds. We in our experience in running the railroad safe parking, which was a lower barrier model, and Prado safe parking, is in our experience, the issue is not the program itself, it's how can we mitigate spillover.
Yeah.
And through the rotation and through the locking of these site facilities outside of program hours, having frequent drive-throughs, we're really confident that that can be addressed efficiently. And so that gave us confidence to move forward with these sites because, like I said, most of the issues are outside, not with the program enrollees. And from talking with program enrollees, we almost to a T, especially in the railroad safe parking, they were consistently telling us, I just need a place to sleep. I just need a place to rest and then go about my day the next day. And I personally did the checkouts at the railroad site multiple times. I mean, almost everybody was in their vehicle going to bed by the time I was leaving at 7 p.m. And most people are gone before checkout even arrives at 6 a.m. So that's part of why we kept the site small, smaller than railroad, because we feel that to have a manageable number is more realistic and allows us to actually make sure that we are being good neighbors to the neighborhood, and we can do the vetting that we talked about, that I discussed there. And one last note, our intention is not to, first month in have 12 full spots. We want to make sure that we are doing true vetting of individuals into the program. So our startup may be slow, where we only have 3 people enrolled in the program for a month, and then maybe 4. So we're purposefully trying to make it so the folks who are enrolled in the program we really know very well.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
One final question, and I promise I'm going to shut up. You mentioned there are going to be site visits every 2 hours, so roughly 5 to 6 visits per night, right? By this program manager, whoever the person is in charge that's at 40 Prado. What happens in between those? So if I'm just driving along, looking, I need a place to sleep. And I just happen to see this little cluster of people. Look at that. There's a porta potty. There's a little trash there. It seems very, very convenient. Could I just drive into the site and park next to the existing vehicles and wait for the person to find me out? Or is there limited access?
So at some of the sites there is limited access, not all of the sites. However, in the in-between those drive-throughs, we do have within the program a site captain who is a designated participant in the program, who is there to communicate with us when we're not there. And that was really effective at Railroad, where we would get text messages at sometimes 3 in the morning, and we were able to alert SLO PD, ask them to check it out that somebody is trespassing in this program, and then ask them to move on if we're not able to go out ourselves within that time frame. We also have worked with the site specifically to have additional measures put in place, cameras, et cetera, on some of those. So that's an additional factor that we have.
Yeah, Daisy.
One thing I was also going to mention that CAPSLO, just reiterating that CAPSLO will be doing an MOU with each site, and some of those site-specific requirements would be included if there's a need for temporary barriers to kind of block an entrance once the program hours have started. And so that's something that we'd be looking at. And like the Damon Garcia site, that's something that we've talked about with city staff, that there would be water barriers put in place to prevent entry of non-participants. And so that is something that we utilized at the railroad location, was water barriers to designate that parking area. And we'd be looking at that for each specific site and seeing what was needed and talking to the host site to make sure that those elements be put in place.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Any other questions for the applicant? Go ahead.
I've got a list of things. I'll try to just focus on staff things so we can get to public comment. But there was something about a half-mile rule, and outside of program hours, you have to stay within a half a mile. I didn't understand that at all.
Yeah, I can clarify, and that's in CAPSLO's participant agreement. It's one of the requirements for participants that they're not allowed to be within a half-mile radius of the site.
Okay.
So, we've had concerns from property owners. I know we met with Cesslock, which is adjacent to the Damon Garcia property, and they were concerned about vehicles just leaving the parking lot and parking on industrial right there in between Cesslock and Damon Garcia. That would not be allowed for participants. They would have to vacate that half-mile radius outside of the site.
I somehow saw it that you had to stay within that, so this makes a lot more sense. Thank you. And then Calle Joaquin, you said that was going to be utilized outside of tourist season. I kind of wondered what tourist season is here.
Yeah, it's a year-round. We've done outreach to all of the neighboring hotels and properties, businesses in that location, and that was one of the kind of requests from those hotels was outside of peak tourism, but again, it's a pretty large.
So like September when all the Cal Poly parents come? And...
Yeah, and I think June, July, August, and June and July, fortunately, we'd be prioritizing the Damon Garcia site. But yeah, we would be continuing to outreach with those sites to make sure that we were listening to any community concerns.
Okay, great. That seems like a real advantage of this distributed model where you can have the program go to places that make sense for that time of year and so on. Is there any kind of time limit for participants to stay? It's not a 14-day thing, or it sounds like you can stay for quite a while if you need to.
Yeah, Jack may want to address this. I can give a high-level answer. It's based on a 90-day model. That's what CAPSLO uses for most of their programming. And I don't know if you want to expand on that, Jack.
Sorry. So for our safe parking program, our housing focused shelter program, we have a 90-day model where we set up care plans, we work with somebody, and we give them an initial 90 days. If they're still engaged with a case manager, working on a housing plan after that 90 days, and by no fault of their own, they're still needing our services, we continue services with them on 30-day increments. So every 30 days, then we review and make sure that they're still making progress or still engaging with their case manager. And if for some reason they stop engaging, then we would say, okay, this is your final 30 days. But the whole while, they still have to maintain adherence to the behavior contract and the site rules. So if they violate those, that's, even if it's on day 2, you violated on day 2. So that 90-day piece doesn't override adhering to the rules.
Fair enough. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Occupancy at 40 Prado at the 12 sites there, is that continuously 100% occupied?
Not 100%. I mean, we operate a little bit in, it's a bad analogy, but like a hotel, we're never at 100% occupancy. Typically, we have 10 to 11 a night.
Okay.
Most recently, actually, credit to our own success, we were able to house a lot of people in December through some lease ups at Tiburon and Anderson. So our numbers actually went down, but more recently we were able to get them back up. So we have a lot of new enrollments. It just ebbs and flows.
But that's not reflective of, you've got 100 plus on the wait list basically, right?
Yeah. So when we the reason there's a little bit of a lag is when we have somebody exit to housing, then we engage somebody on the wait list, and it takes some time to get them enrolled, but we're not gonna, if they're working with us to get over there, or hey, it's harder for them to get to our site, we work with them to get them enrolled. So it sometimes lags.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's not gonna be any signage at this site that identifies it as safe parking spot. Is that correct?
We're still confirming signage, and I think that'll probably be on a site-by-site basis, depending on what's needed. But we would most likely, during that month of the rotation, have signage on site, but not outside of the month that it's being utilized.
Okay. I can see how that could be work at like Damon Garcia once you go down industrial, and then it's like identifying here's where you go. But I could see it being a liability potentially on like the Foothill site, where it's you're driving by and somebody could see it and go, oh, I want to check that out, you know, and.
Yeah, and it
okay.
may be temporary signage that's on a sandwich board that could be put out at the beginning of check-in and taken down
Right.
at checkout. So that is something that we've still been discussing with Capslo and the host
And then,
sites.
is there any plan to have security cameras on site?
That would be on a site-by-site basis. I know two of our faith community sites that were at the community meeting last week said that they have or they're looking to install additional cameras on their sites. And I know the site outside of city limits has security cameras. I don't believe, and that would be something I'd have to check on, I'm not sure the security cameras at the city sites. That's something I could
Is that
follow
something
up
that
on.
could be integrated with the bathroom building, or, I don't know. We don't have to worry about that, but fair enough. And the site captain thing, that would have to be as the program gets going and as you've got participants, then maybe a week in or something, then you can identify that. You may not be able to start out with that though, right?
Correct, and that would be something that Capslo would work and identify the right fit for that role as the site captain. That's something that they implemented with the railroad program that was really successful, but it does take some time to identify who that right individual is.
Okay, fair enough. And would there be a published calendar of which sites are going to be active through the course of the year? Or is that going to be
The
not
plan as
so?
of now is not to publish that publicly. It would just be available for the participants, the enrolled participants,
Okay.
so that they would know obviously which sites are rotating each month, but that we wouldn't make that publicly made. Obviously, if any community members or residents wanted to find out that schedule, we would provide contact information for Capslo so that they could reach out to find out what month
Okay.
the rotation would
Well,
be
and the
happening.
intent is to address the currently here population, not to put it on the World Wide Web.
Correct.
I have other comments and questions, but I'll stop there, and we want to get to public comment. Thank you.
And I believe I heard that if it's determined that cameras or some other safety necessities are identified, this could be part of the MOUs with the particular locations, right?
Correct, yeah, that was to be addressed on a site-by-site basis.
All right, we have reached the time for public comment. I believe I know the answer to this question, but Deputy City Clerk, do we have any requests to speak?
Yes, Chair. Currently, I have 6 speakers. So if anybody else wanted to speak, please fill out one of the yellow forms up here at the front. There's also some outside in the foyer, and turn them in. The first couple of speakers are going to be Young Sue McCann, Linda Belch, and John Townsend. And also just want to bring your attention, there is a timer in the upper corner of the screen. If you could please adhere to that. If not, I have a bell here that I'll ring to get your attention.
Hi, my name is Young Soo McCann. I live in 1661, do I have to give the address, right? That's what the instruction says. 1661 Cordova Drive, San Luis Obispo, California. I pastor the Journey Christian Fellowship on Foothill. And our church is full support of this safe parking program. And as you know, we live in a very beautiful city, right, in the whole country, and it is expensive to live here. And as America is a land of opportunity, and I think the safe parking program provides that opportunity for all community members, including our homeless community, with safety and security. I think our SLO City and Capslo have done a wonderful job coming up with this program with protocols to check in and working with our church and other faith community to help people to find permanent housing. I think that's so wonderful to do that. And before the 40 Prado was built, like the big one, and our church have participated the overflow homeless shelter successfully, very well, with working with Capslo and City. And we, Journey Christian Fellowship, have voted unanimously to support this program. And I think more of program of this kind of things needs to be needed to provide security and safety for all members of our community, including our homeless ones. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Hello, Commission members. My name is Linda Velch, Deputy Director of Adult and Homeless Services for the County of San Luis Obispo. I'm here to encourage approval and support of item 4A, the request to consider 5 sites for the rotating overnight safe parking pilot program. According to the 2024 County of San Luis Obispo point-in-time count, almost 30% of unsheltered individuals surveyed reported sleeping in their vehicles the night before. This ranks vehicular homelessness as the highest form of homelessness, above even those who reported sleeping on the streets or in other outdoor locations. Individuals experiencing homelessness who reside in their vehicles overnight face numerous challenges. Lack of access to basic amenities such as restrooms or showers, poor nutrition, inability to maintain consistent contact with service providers as they search for new locations each day that they can park and sleep overnight, all contribute to stress and instability, making the journey out of homelessness all that much more difficult. By approving the rotating overnight safe parking program, the City of San Luis Obispo will be taking affirmative step in providing assistance to community members in need, providing a dedicated space where individuals experiencing homelessness can connect with case managers and set down the daily burden of trying to achieve just their basic needs, and instead allowing them the space to find a path forward and a path out of homelessness. The rotating overnight safe parking program provides an innovative solution that leverages resources and demonstrates true partnership between public, nonprofit, and faith-based organizations. It is only by leveraging these partnerships and stepping forward together that we'll be able to co-create solutions to the long-standing crisis of homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is John Townsend, followed by Taylor Simpson and Eileen Brill.
Thank you, John Townsend, and thank you all for your commitment to the community. Really appreciate you volunteering your time. I'm a downtown resident, long-term resident of San Luis Obispo, have been engaged working with Daisy informally in a number of capacities around the homelessness issue. And it's just something since I've retired that has just garnered my attention because it's such a pervasive issue and one that is really challenging and requires the entire community to really help solve. I did participate in the point-in-time count this last year, and as you may not know, we're assigned areas to go out and conduct the counts. My area happened to be that in the lower Higuera region, so we pretty much had, I bet I probably talked to a third of the 140 people that were living in their cars. I didn't know what to expect. You know, we would walk up to a trailer, we would walk up to a truck, we would knock on the door. They were a little reluctant to come out and talk with us, but they did. And what I found was these people were right there. They were so close to getting the next step along the journey out of being homeless into long-term permanent housing. And a program like this that is so well designed, has proven success in other communities, and has a very capable partner like CapSlow to manage it, which is going to be a job. I know you know that. That's going to be critical to the success of this program. It's not going to be easy, but they have a proven track record of running programs in support of the homeless community, and they're excellent at what they do. So to me, it's a well-designed program. It has success and precedence in other communities. It is taking that segment of the homeless population that just need the things that you so eloquently described to get them onto the next step of the journey. And I think the risk and the reward in this program is right in the balance where we need high reward for a little bit of risk. We're going to stub our toe. We're going to make mistakes. There's no doubt about it. But I think the program, the way it's designed, is such that we'll be able to catch those quickly. We'll adapt. We'll move forward. And I think we'll look back on this a number of years from now and say, we're glad we said yes tonight. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Taylor Simpson, followed by Eileen Brill.
Good evening. My name is Taylor Simpson. I live on Sierra Way. I look directly into the Renovate Church at 2075 Johnson. I want to begin by saying that I'm not against the safe parking program. I recognize its value and importance for our community. However, I do not support placing safe parking locations in residential neighborhoods, specifically at 2075 Johnson Avenue and the Foothill Boulevard sites. As a parent of 3 young children, ages 1, 4, and 9, at a very impressionable stage in their lives, I'm deeply concerned about the potential impacts on them and other families in these neighborhoods. Johnson Avenue, Sierra Way, Ellis Street, and the surrounding areas are home to many families with young children. Additionally, high school students walk through these areas every day on their way to and from school, and the church near the location operates a daycare. These are spaces that prioritize the safety and well-being of children, and introducing a safe parking site here poses significant risk to this environment. A few months ago at Renovate Church allowed an RV to park 24 hours a day. The occupants of the RV were consistently disruptive to my family and neighbors, using drugs, drinking, yelling, screaming at each other. My children witnessed all of this behavior, and it became our dinner table conversation. This vehicle finally was asked to leave after numerous complaints, but the impact is still real for my family. At the railroad site, I personally witnessed issues with disruptive behavior, including yelling, swearing, substance use, and excessive drinking. If these behaviors occurred there, I believe it is reasonable to expect similar disruptions at these proposed locations, which would directly affect families and children living nearby. However, the railroad site remains the ideal location for this safe parking program. It is separated from residential areas and provides a more appropriate setting for this type of program. By implementing effective checks and balances as discussed by CAPSLO at the railroad site, the city can ensure both the success of the program and the safety of our neighborhoods. In addition, there are other city and county sites that are better suited for this program that are not within neighborhoods with families and young children. Thank you for your time and consideration. I urge you to protect our neighborhoods by keeping safe parking locations out of residential areas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Eileen Brill, followed by Ann Wyatt and John Olenek, and then lastly, Mark Lamo.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Eileen Brill, and I live in San Luis Obispo. I have been a resident of our county for over 30 years, and I'm in favor of the safe parking being presented tonight. It is one component of addressing a big need within our homeless community, and has been a proven path to permanent, stable housing. I toured the Railroad Safe Parking Program and was impressed by how tightly it was run by CAPSLO. The participants were beyond grateful to have a safe and secure place to sleep for the night. They were keenly aware that anyone who broke the rules could jeopardize the entire program. It was not only closely monitored by CAPSLO, the participants themselves made sure that all the rules were being followed. All they wanted was a safe and secure place to sleep, and they worked hard to ensure that happened night after night. Many people don't realize how close they are to becoming homeless. I spoke to one woman who lost her home in a fire. While fighting her insurance company to cover the loss, she depleted her savings and ended up homeless with only her car to stay in. But it was because of the programs in our county that she eventually found housing and a place to call home once again. I believe the sites chosen are quite good. I urge you to approve this much-needed program. It's an essential piece to curbing homelessness in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. And while we're getting towards the end of those that have submitted slips, just remind anyone else who might want to speak. We're going to close public comment soon, so if you'd like to speak, please get a yellow slip.
Good evening, Chair Cooley and Commissioners. Ann Wyatt, Executive Director of Smart Share Housing Solutions. It's not my intent to be with you at every meeting here, but really appreciate the opportunity to come out tonight to support this project and ask for your approval. Also to thank staff who's worked on this, the applicants CAPSLO, and the many faith groups who've participated and been willing to host at different sites. Smart Share Housing Solutions supports housing choice for city and county residents and a continuum of options to meet people where they're at in their individual housing needs. we need all the options that we can get. If anything, I'd have you approve more spaces and allowances, but understand the reasoning for the 12 spaces here. I think sites could probably accommodate a couple more spaces, but I know that'll be something that'll be looked at through the course of this pilot. I'm just wondering if there's some opportunity to have you approve contiguous use of 2 sites at once. I don't know how this permit is written, and I wasn't really reading the project, thinking of it until I got here tonight. But as more sites come in line and possibilities, maybe I guess a question out there for you would be if 2 sites could be used at once, 12 spaces per site, if perhaps more sites came available. So I know that's maybe not right in front of you, but if there was a way to kind of approve more options right now, so that would be out there if they came along, I'd sure love to see that. I'd hope we could offer or look toward offering ultimately more long-term affordable RV parking spaces, because I think it's a viable option. We have something like an estimated 15 million van lifers, people choosing to live in RVs and vans, off-grid movable homes. And so I think it is a viable way of living. It's one many people are choosing. It's the only option some can afford, and they have good reasons for it in a lot of cases, wanting to own their home, wanting to have their pets, wanting mobility. So I'd really, it's another one not before you tonight, but as we're all thinking about this continuum of solutions, more long-term places to allow this and understand that it's a viable solution for many, be a nice way to go. Really understand the concerns of the neighbor, Mr. Simpson. There's no ideal site, so what we all know, and I think this is a nice solution to move them around. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
The last 2 speakers are John Olenek and Mark Lamo.
Good evening. My name is John Olenek. I'm also a resident on Sierra Way. I just wanted to mention that I appreciate all the professionals here who are working hard to try to solve a very sad social problem and address a demand that's certainly far exceeding our capacity to do anything about. Being on Sierra Way doesn't make my street, my neighborhood, or me personally any more important than any other site locations. But one difference I wanted to mention is we're also in very close proximity to the county's Bishop Street proposal. And I'm not totally up on what the status of that is, but if implemented, will certainly have a much greater impact on our neighborhood and the adjacent streets associated with that. I'll ask that if approvals come tonight, that more specific conditions be implemented within the power of your ability to do that to protect the neighborhoods. This might include such things as that half-mile radius, a more zero tolerance policy. I didn't see what the policy was specifically, if there was violations of that, because definitely the no waiting thing is going to be a big deal for those in the neighborhoods. People queuing up before and after to maybe secure an adjacent spot to make sure they get in time. Next level conditions could possibly include the city implementing a parking permit program like other neighborhoods do. And if that's something that's determined, it's not something that we have to apply and fight for. It's something that this body and others associated would be able to support and help us implement that. And lastly, if you could help us with the understanding, if there's more comments tonight, help us understand the methodology or the metrics by which you'll measure success or lack of. Is it 1 violation? Is it 2 violations? Is it 5? Is it 100? Is it complaints, or is it certain things? So if you can help us appreciate that as well, that'll go a long way, and if implemented, our ability to be able to help manage it successfully. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm the last one, so I'll try to be quick, because sadly it's getting close to my bedtime. My handwriting is getting so bad I can't even read it. It's Lamore, not but my name's Mark Lamore. I'm with Transitions Mental Health Association, and I'm the Director of Homeless Services. We provide permanent supportive housing and outreach to over 300 of our community members who are in need of housing and support. We work closely with CAPSLO. We have outreach workers that go out into the community, meet with the homeless community members. And one of the challenges we have is establishing rapport. Homeless individuals have been told a lot of things over the years, some true, not so true. Sometimes they get a little suspicious of what we're saying and how we're saying it. And the key to success is building that rapport. And sometimes that's just meeting after meeting after meeting to establish the trust and rapport. One of the advantages of having the safe parking program is it is an established place that our outreach workers can go and establish that rapport and meet that individual and build that trust so we can provide services. We were fortunate enough to house, I believe it was 3, possibly 4, memory's getting a little faint there, but we were able to provide housing for those individuals because we were able to establish that connection. I have a unique opportunity or advantage. My office overlooked the railroad parking lot, safe parking. So every morning I would come to work, CAPSLO was there, they were moving barriers, they were checking people out. Every night when I left, they were taking care of business. I was very impressed with how they ran that program. It was very well run. So I'm not hearing a question about the need of the program. Some of the questions I heard tonight were about how it was going to be run and how effective it would be. And I can assure you from my direct observation, it will be well run. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deputy Clerk, do we have any other requests to speak?
That was the last one.
Okay, last call for public comment. All right, we're going to go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the commission. Commissioners, any other additional questions for applicant or staff?
I was kind of waiting for anybody else to go first because I always have my list, but I don't want to.
Commissioner Jorgensen, you had your hand up. You want to?
I have just one.
Go for it.
Go quick? Sure. Well, done. I wondered if staff could explain for the entire audience how neighborhood communication will be handled and how that ideally will be an ongoing process. Are there hotlines? And I think the point of the 2 people who live on Sierra is very visible from this site, and maybe it certainly seems unique among the somewhat nearby residential housing in a couple areas. Certainly Foothill is another area where housing is close by, but it seems like it makes sense that the neighbors will want to be sure that this isn't going to cause any problems at all. So how do you respond to that?
Yeah, I can start, and then Jack, if you have anything else to add as the applicant. But CAPSLO did have to submit a neighborhood relations plan as part of their application, and that includes, kind of outlines the requirements that they'll provide various methods in which the community can contact them if they have any questions or concerns during business hours and after hours. So they would be providing that information to any neighbors or community members adjacent to the sites, including businesses. They would also be, all concerns or complaints would be documented, and copies of those would be given to their leadership. Participants, like we've mentioned, would have the participant agreement that they would be signing, and then CAPSLO staff would also be doing host site, facility checks, and then community meetings as kind of requested or needed by the city or any of the community groups. And so that will be an ongoing process, and even in advance of this program being implemented. Obviously, tonight is really just looking at and reviewing the 5 sites. There are additional steps in the process, confirming the funding sources, executing the MOUs with those host sites, and then CAPSLO would continue to be, doing community engagement along with the city and the host sites on a case-by-case basis, seeing what's needed in each neighborhood, and working with them to make sure that their, congregation members, their neighbors are well informed of the program, know who to contact if there are any issues or questions. And then we mentioned earlier the participant list would be shared with not only SLO PD, but those host sites. So if there are issues, they would have the information of, who is enrolled in the program, and then the right contact information of who to contact if there is an emergency. Obviously, calling 911 if there is an emergency, but also making sure that the host sites and any neighbors would have a direct contact number for CAPSLO to be able to get a hold of that on-site or the on-call staff member with CAPSLO. So we would make sure that neighbors, the host sites, and kind of any interested community members would have that contact information. Jack, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, so we already have established a CAPSLO hotline. The number is on our website. It's routed to our communications team and then to the directors that are responsible for those programs. That's something that's already in place. I know because I get those emails and phone calls. So does our manager of Prado, Cecil Hale, here. In addition to the CAPSLO hotline, we have a on-call cellular phone that's for the on-shift supervisor of Prado that's available at all times that we route from the Prado main line. So if somebody can't call and look up our hotline, they can call Prado and get connected with a staff person there who can field complaints or field compliments as well. And in addition to all those, in the mailers that went out to the community, my personal email and phone are on them. And we did commit to having community meetings, as Daisy said, with the surrounding communities of the Safe Parking Program on an ongoing basis, not just one meeting done. We plan to have this as a recurrent meeting to get community feedback.
Do you mind if I sneak in a question? I wanted to follow on something I think I heard Ms. Wyatt mention. She mentioned the possibility of expanding to multiple sites at once. Am I correct that the limiting factor there would be resources to supervise and manage those things? But procedurally, is there anything that would allow that or prevent that in what we're looking at tonight? At more than one site at a time?
I can say from the applicant perspective, we would not have the capacity or ability or interest to operate two sites concurrently. We are comfortable with 24 total sites. We feel like that's a proportional response for our agency, but we also are encouraging other localities in the county to step up during this pilot and after the pilot to have their own safe parking programs. So we don't want to take a disproportionate burden of our staffing and our programming onto the city of SLO. We feel that this size is actually appropriate for what we can do effectively.
So assuming even if this is a raging success and everyone is happy with the outcome, we couldn't just flip the switch and turn on more sites without more resources?
Yes, you are correct. And if this is a raging success and wonderful, I would say we have over 100 people served per year with over 50 households being housed per year. I feel confident that we would be making a dent in those experiencing vehicular homelessness. The odd thing about our programs is the more successful they are, the more they're putting themselves out of business. So our hope is that then we can reduce the size because we're so successful.
Thank you. Commissioner Houghton?
Okay. So I'll just start out by saying I'm in support of this application tonight, and we have been at this at least 3 times. Is it 3 or 4? 3. Well, yeah, and I've used a few baseball analogies here, but we've been over 3. I think that some of the other sites were more problematic and a hard way to start. And so I've been thinking we kind of need to get some base hits here before we swing for the fences. And it seems like this proposal is on target for that. So, and I want to remind everybody that there's a cost of not doing this too. These people are out there. They are living in their cars. They're parking in quiet streets wherever they can figure it out, and they're not getting the support, or they're not really in the system necessarily, right? And so it's better for them to be part of the system and engaged and actually participating too as site captains or supporting each other. So sometimes it seems like, oh, I don't know if we can do this. Well, it's already happening. And so I see this as an improvement to the existing situation. There was a real difference in the public comments that came in this week for this proposal compared to previous ones. I don't know if that's just because of the locations. There was only a few negative comments or concerned comments, I'll say, for the Foothill site. And then we've had a couple of concerned commenters for the Renovate site tonight. I hear all that, but there was also quite a few very supportive comments, and I really appreciate that, particularly from Kathy Walker, who's been here for a few other meetings on other topics, but so that was great. The railroad parking thing, it's kind of a Rorschach test, it seems like, right? People seem to almost find whatever they want to out of the experience that we had there. So, but I think that the difference in that model and this one has been pretty clearly described here, and that really helps move on from whatever you think might have been the big problem at the railroad site. And in the scheme of what needs to be done here, this is one of the easy things, right? And so I appreciate the comment from, Mr. Townsend? These are the people that are kind of right on the edge and are closest to being back fully housed and kind of where they used to be perhaps, and that's where we want everybody to be in a safe place, right? And the other comment too about how you don't know, a lot of folks and a lot of us don't know how close we are to being in this situation, right? And so I took that to heart as well. And Mr. Lennox request for more conditions. I think we could talk about that, the zero tolerance for the half-mile rule. Permit parking is a whole nother kind of a category of things. Metrics for success, I think that, you know, for a lot of us, it's going to be no news is good news, and we hope that this succeeds quietly and that there isn't really any ripples in the water. That remains to be seen. Future sites. So when this came around, we talked about up to a dozen sites, right? And so the way that this is written, as I understand it, this package comes before us for approval, but the next other sites are going to be at the director's discretion. Is that correct?
Yes, it's a director's action permit, but I always have the ability to forward it to the Planning Commission if deemed necessary or appropriate.
And I believe we specifically requested that the next round come to the commission for approval first, correct?
The next rounding being this round, correct.
Yes.
Okay. I would suggest that maybe the next one too, because this obviously is a topic that brings people into the room and brings both support and concern. So I guess if it's at your discretion, then that's my request or suggestion that the next one or two that come along, at least consider what if it should come to us and get a full public hearing, because otherwise it's administrative action and it just happens. And I think that's something we want to avoid, because then people will feel like this is being done to them, right, rather than done with them. Does that make sense? Okay. I've been there. I have not experienced homelessness other than when I go camping. But I went down to Forty Prado, and some of you guys know this story, but when we did the expansion of safe parking from 7 to 12 at Forty Prado, I went down there and spent the night, and I went through the whole intake process. I met the staff, I met Cecil, and I got checked out on Megan's Law and everything, and I was really impressed with the staff and with the sincerity and the care that everybody took. I had a hot meal there. I met a bunch of people. I heard a lot of stories. these are our neighbors. These are people. They're people in our community, and they have something to offer in many cases, right? So I just wanted to mention that. This van lifer component is an interesting one too, and there was a written comment about, well, why can't we just have an RV parking area? I don't remember who that one was from, but that's not the topic tonight, but it does seem like there's some possible opportunity, and maybe that Venn diagram doesn't overlap very much. But I'm not a van lifer, but I have a van. And there's a lot of young people that are living out of their vans, and probably a lot of them would like to be here, or particularly Morro Bay, because a lot of them are surfers. So maybe there's something to be thought about there to have the kind of facility or place that would attract them, because a lot of them are pretty involved in micro businesses, and they would be adding to our economy. And also the people that we're talking about in this cohort of vehicular homelessness, is that what we're calling it? Most of them have jobs, right? And so they're all contributing to our economy as well. So, and finally, I'll close by just saying, I don't go to church. I'm not exactly a God-fearing person, but I think this is religion at its best, and is actually, so I applaud our faith community in stepping up and participating in this and being willing to do this. So thank you for that. That's all I have for now.
Any questions, or I guess we can also move into deliberations if you'd like, but go ahead with questions. If you
Well, I don't have a question, but I'd be happy to make a motion and offer final thoughts to get the...
Yeah, I think we can take a motion and continue discussion if anyone has anything to say.
Sure. I'll make a motion to adopt a draft resolution approving the 5 sites for the rotating overnight safe parking pilot program.
All right, do we have a second?
I'd be happy to second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Before we call for a vote, any further discussion, any other closing comments anyone would like to make?
I'd just like to echo what Commissioner Howden said, because you read my mind exactly about, it's hard for me to find a better example of doing God's work, so a big appreciation to the 3 faith communities that came forward.
Go ahead.
I'd like to commend the city and the community and the churches that came together and worked on this. And I do sympathize with some of the neighbors, and they have some very valid concerns. In an ideal world, these sites could all be fenced. There will be a lot of issues that come up, but I trust that your individual programs and the staff at CapSlow will address those quickly. I did the homeless count, and the Railroad Square was part of my area, and there were vehicles that were parked there that couldn't move, and those situations are going to happen, and you're going to work through them and move them on. I also have, when we had the rotating church programs, I've stayed there, and that was a very controlled environment where the doors were locked and you had volunteers staying awake all night. You may or may not have that. You may decide that you need that, but I think it's a very well thought out program, and I commend you for pulling it together. Good luck.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
Well, I just echo what we heard from Commissioner Flores too, that I think the public-private partnerships in this model, it is much better thought out, and it's more mature than the first time around. I think we've all learned a lot. I think one of the things I felt the first time around is that because the state and the county have so many responsibilities for health and welfare, the cities don't, and I think it was hard for us to get on into the middle of this and really jump in with both feet without making some mistakes. And I think we've learned from that, and I'm really anxious to see if this can work well and that everybody's satisfied with the way it works. So there we go.
Yeah, there was one thing I missed on my list here, which is the word rotating. I think that the way that this program is laid out really takes advantage of that rotating aspect and the thoughtfulness of where to go at certain times of year. And I had thought that, I didn't realize it was just one site at a time. So I really do think that that's going to be helpful to move this around, and we'll get experience from the different sites. And again, to the close by neighbors, I hear you as well. I think that there's adequate protections here, and there's methods that can be dealt with if things, if problems arise. So, yeah, nicely done.
Yeah, maybe those two sites that are closer to residential, their site-specific MOUs can address that more concretely, since each site is going to have their own, yeah.
And I'm not going to repeat everything that everyone's just said, but I just wanted to thank everyone, thank city staff, thank the faith-based communities who stepped up here. We really appreciate it, and I also agree this is just a fantastic example of private and public partnership. You know, city staff probably heard us over the last couple of years express some impatience about when will we see this come back. You know, but I think this was, I mean, you never want to wait, but I think this was worth the wait because I think this is thoughtfully designed, and I think that this is, our hope is it's going to work out really well. So yeah, of course, I'm in support of this as well. If there are no other comments, go ahead and call for a vote.
Commissioner Munoz Morris?
Yes.
Commissioner Flores?
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Khan?
Yes.
Vice Chair Houghton?
Yes.
Chair Cooley?
Yes.
And that motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. You do not have to stay for the rest of the meeting, but you are certainly welcome to. We will give you a couple of minutes if you'd like to leave. We're going to wrap up here in a few minutes.
It's nice to actually talk in front of an audience from time to time, isn't it?
It is.
Thank you.
Wait just another minute or two. All right, that takes us to the staff updates and agenda forecast. Would Deputy Community Development Director Tyler Corey please provide the update?
All right, well, thanks, Chair Cooley, members of the Planning Commission. Looking out at our next regularly scheduled meeting is February 12th. Currently, we have one item for that meeting. It is the zoning regulations update, which mainly includes changes to our accessory dwelling unit ordinance, particularly looking at changes to make it consistent with state law. So that will be coming on the 12th. Looking out past the 12th, we have our next meeting on the 26th, and currently we have a few items scheduled for the 26th. We have the general plan annual report. So that'll be a receive and file basically for the Planning Commission, and then we'll be moving that on to the City Council. We have the potential update to the airport area specific plan, and this is the update we've been working on to address changes to the airport land use plan that allows some additional residential development in the southern part of the city. And so we're looking at allowing mixed use in certain zones out there where it's appropriate and consistent with that plan. So that will also be on the agenda. And finally, we might be looking at a modification to an existing project. This is the 600 Tank Farm project. Initially, the project, this really has to do with the road infrastructure component. Initially, the project was approved with a roundabout, and due to some constraints in terms of accessing and acquiring property, the applicant is looking to make a change to that road feature, and so that will be coming back potentially on that night as well.
Was that for that thing called the Link?
No, that is not that project.
Oh.
The Link is a separate proposal. It's been quiet for quite a while. I think there's also some issues with the property owner in terms of moving that one forward.
I wasn't quick enough to keep up with your projections there. Could you just summarize each of the next meetings that were happening again?
Sure. So February 12th, zoning regulations.
Okay.
And then the 26th, general plan annual report, airport area specific plan update, modification to the 600 Tank Farm project.
That's all for the 26th?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
The zoning regulations from the 12th.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions for staff or comments?
I just have a comment. I will be out of the meeting on the 26th. I won't be here.
I just had one quick question. And maybe, in fact, the general plan annual report would be a good place to pose the question, but I'll throw it out anyhow. It seems like every time I see the local newspaper, which is harder and harder to get these days, there's another business closing in the Madonna Plaza area, the whole general area, just saying big box stores seem like they're just closing all the time. And I should go back and look, but do we have zoning that would allow housing on top of commercial in that area? I mean, we're probably not quite ready for a Santana Row, but it just seems like so much wasted space, so close in, and it'd be nice to somehow goose them a bit and get some things going. I know there's a lot of property owners and it's really complicated, but it would sure be interesting to see a little life down there.
Sure. So the zoning out there would allow for mixed-use development currently without any changes to zoning. The density out there, I believe, is 36 units an acre, so quite high. And yes, that is an area that could use some revitalization.
Okay, I'll leave it at that for now.
Anything else?
I was just going to say, you're not going to make a whole lot of friends by trying to compare SLO to San Jose with Santana Row, so as nice as it is to go up there.
That is something, though, that's been explored and is being done, and converting big box commercial into residential, so it could have a place. I'll ask a question about we've talked about having we've done a lot of Greek and fraternity stuff in the last several meetings, and we've talked about having some kind of a summit of sorts with Cal Poly, the city, and the Greek system. Is that anywhere on our radar right now?
We did add it to one of our goals, but I don't know if there's anything concrete.
So not necessarily a summit, but code enforcement, which is in community development, as you all know, is creating kind of program guidelines and standard operating procedures to address unpermitted fraternities. And we're working closely also with the planning division because we have the crossover with the conditionally permitted fraternities and sororities. And we at the kind of leadership team level have ongoing conversations consistently with Cal Poly. We also work with our police department. So there's a lot of stakeholders involved in this issue. And it was brought up by the Planning Commission as kind of the goal setting, priority setting. I would encourage people, if this is a topic that's of interest to them, that tomorrow night at the forum, I imagine this will also come up as an issue. And so based on those conversations and where the council goes, that will dictate whether or not something comes out of that as a work program item or something for community development. But we are, regardless, working on the issue with the tools that we already have that exist.
So what I'm not hearing is we're not moving the frats to Madonna Plaza.
I have not heard that as a suggestion by them yet.
Okay.
We're not saying that, though, either.
You just heard it.
Okay, so let's just say that we're not saying either way. Okay. Any other questions for staff or comments? All right. The next regular meeting of the Planning Commission is scheduled for February 12th, 2025 at 6 p.m. in the council chambers at City Hall, 990 Palm Street, San Luis Obispo, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Ciao.